So the first part of our lesson today, what our goal is to look at something called a literal equation. And the phrase is literal, and you should kind of think of things like literacy. And literacy, if you're thinking about literacy, has to do with reading and writing. And so that's where this same word comes from. Literal, the word literal, if we have a literal equation, it's the fact that it has more than one letter. More than one letter. So you guys have actually used literal equations quite a bit. For your last warm-up equation, your last warm-up was the area equals base times height divided by 2. That's a literal equation because you just did, how many letters did it have? One, two, three letters. So that's why this would be a literal equation. That one would also, whoops, that disappeared. Let's try that again. That one would also be classified as a formula because a formula talks about the relationship between quantities and dimensions. So obviously, as the height of a triangle gets bigger, the area is going to get bigger. So there's a relationship between those. So today, I'll be honest with you, is not the most fun lesson you'll ever do. So it kind of is good that I don't have to do it in person. You guys just have to watch and hopefully follow along. But the goal here is this. The goal today, you will not be getting nice, clean answers like x equals 2 today. You will not be getting clean x equals 2, y equals 7, none of that. That is not going to be the outcome today. We're not going to end up with that type of answer. What you will end up with, okay, what you will be ending up with today is you will be ending up with, like in this case, we're asking you to solve for y, you will be ending up with y equals a whole bunch of mess, a whole bunch of things here, lots of different numbers and a letter as well. So be comfortable with that. Be comfortable with the fact that you're not going to get just one clean answer and be done with it. Okay? So let's jump into this first problem. This is a literal equation because it has more than one letter, has an x and a y, and we're asking you guys to solve for y. So here's my analogy for this. If we're trying to solve for y, this is the same as any James Bond movie. In a James Bond movie, you don't attack the main bad guy right away. You get rid of everybody else. So the main bad guy is y, right? That's our main bad guy. But make sure we don't attack him right away. So what I mean by that is, instead of going right after that y, we're not going to do that. We're going to attack the x, the 4x first. So think about that for a second. If we want to get rid of him first, what's the only way to bring 4x over to this side of the equation? To do the opposite of positive 4x. That's a minus 4x. But notice I'm kind of putting that 4x minus 4x off to the right a little bit because 5 and negative 4x are not like terms. So while those are going to cancel out and we have 3y left over there, we don't have, these are not like terms, so we're going to be left with negative 4x plus that positive 5. And notice I'm putting the x in the front just out of habit. I like to put the x's in the front. Okay? So there we go. We've so far we've gotten rid of part of the equation. The bad guy is a little more on its own, but he's not completely on its own. The only way to get the bad guy completely on his own is to divide now by 3. Since that's multiplication, the opposite of multiplication is division. So we're dividing by 3 right there, which means we divide by 3 right here, which means we divide by 3 right there. So the 3's cancel out, and that's essentially it because we can't simplify negative 4 over 3. So that stays the same. We can't simplify 5 over 3. So there you go. That's your equation getting y by itself. So remember, that's not quite as clean and fun as it used to be. Y isn't just equal to a number, it's this whole expression now. Y equals negative 4 thirds x plus 5 thirds. Not near as clean. Let's try some more examples. All right. In this particular one, we want to solve for h. Don't overthink it. Look at your equation. Look at your equation and ask yourself, what's the operation between r squared and h? It's multiplication. So how do I undo multiplication? Division. So divide by r squared on both sides. Divide by r squared. That cancels out. I'm left with H equals V divided by R squared. As soon as H is alone, that means we're good. The second one here, I don't particularly love it written this way, so let's rewrite it. This is your triangle again. It's instead of 1/2 BH, I'm going to write it this way, 1/2 BH. Who are we solving for this time? We're solving for B. So, two things. It's going to take two steps. First, I want to get rid of the fraction. So, this fraction is really division. So, I'm going to multiply. So, I multiply by 2, multiply by 2. All right, the 2's cancel out. So, what's my new equation? 2a equals b times h. Still trying to solve for b. So, if I want to now get rid of the multiplication, I divide. So, we divide by h on both sides. H's cancel out. 2a over h is my answer. Okay, press pause and try number 4 on your own. See if you can make sense of number 4 here. Press pause and then try it out. See if you can get it by itself. You might want to rewrite it with that fraction like I did the first one. Press pause. All right, so if you rewrote it, this is the way I would rewrite it. 5 over 9 like so. F minus 32. And you definitely do not want to distribute that 5/9. Don't multiply the 5/9 through. Look at the 5/9 and say to yourself, hey, fractions are division. So how do I get rid of division? Multiplication by the denominator. So times by 9, times by 9. All of this on this side is one term. So that's why I only have to multiply by 9 once. So if I multiply by 9 on both sides, in this case, the 9's cancel out. So I now have, let's give myself some more space here, 9c equals 5 times f minus 32. And now you have two choices here. You could distribute the 5 like this. You could multiply by 5 on both and distribute that 5, which is okay. But I actually would encourage you to say, well, what operation is that? That's multiplication. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Division. So we could divide by 5 on both sides. Technically, you're dividing that whole thing by 5, right? So if you do that, the 5's cancel out. My new equation is 9c divided by 5. All equals f minus 32. So we have one final thing to do. We're still trying to get that f by itself. The only way to do it is to add 32 over. Now be careful. Oh, this got a little tricky. Okay, you can't add that 32 below it. I'm just going to put it here off to the side. So now my answer is f equals 9/5 c plus 32. There's your answer. That's actually the formula. If you didn't recognize it, that's the formula for going back and forth, converting from um, Celsius and Fahrenheit. You're converting from one to the other. All right. So that's the beginning of our lesson. Check out the next video to jump into the next one.